language link Da Nang and our most recent Listen, Speak and Roar live stream to help you improve your confidence in speaking English. We want you to improve your listening skills, your speaking skills, and your confidence skills when you're speaking English anyway. We have already covered a lot of topics in these videos, such as how to write a resume, or how to pass an interview, how to interact in the workplace. In these videos, we want to give you more words to expand your vocabulary. So, take a look at our page and check those videos out and give them a like. This is the second part of our live stream about how to give a presentation. We've already covered a lot of topics in these videos, like how to write a resume, how to pass an interview. So we want to give you even more information. So if you haven't seen those videos yet, go back into our page and watch them and give the videos a like. If you're ready now for part 2 of our live stream about how to give a presentation, then let's go. Now, let's talk a little about creating presentation tools for your talk. Also, creating visuals inside your presentation. Explaining a visual is very important in your presentation. If you have a PowerPoint next to you, but you don't talk about it or address it, then your audience can become a little bit confused, especially if you are presenting a lot of information. Try some of these phrases. Let's now look at the next slide, which shows... I don't have the clicker. Now our audience know that we're going to see another slide and they are ready for the new information. Let's try this first. First, let me quickly explain the graph. Now the audience know what we are talking about, and we have drawn their attention to the graph in our PowerPoint. Try another phrase, like this. You can see that different colours have been used to show, or you can see that different colours have been used to indicate. It's the same. But we are helping our audience to understand the visual information in our presentation. We can even draw their attention to different parts of the screen and say, for example, the key in the bottom left-hand corner shows you. It's a good way to keep our audience listening and watching by telling them where they should be looking on the slide while we are explaining it. This is our way of highlighting information, and highlighting information can help show people where this information is in your presentation. So not only I like to start by drawing your attention to this part of the graph, but we can also say, what I'd like to point out here is the sales figures from last month, for example. Also, one way to get the ears of our delegates to be listening to us is, I think you'll be surprised to see maybe the sales figures from last month. They hear the word surprised and they think, oh, now I'm listening. We mentioned before about drawing someone's attention to something. We can also use some synonyms like this. I'd like you to focus your attention on this part of the graph. This means we want them to concentrate on a specific area of information. Let's try this phrase. Let's look more closely at the graph, or the diagram, or the table. We're telling our audience there is some information here and we want to go into that information and get more out of it. So let's look more closely into it. So when you start to come to the end of your presentation, you'll need to conclude and summarize your presentation. It's very important for the audience to help them to remember some of the things that you spoke about while you were talking. Concluding a presentation is important to finish well, and summarizing this information is also really important. Whether you do that again in another slide or only through your voice, it's very important both ways. Let's look at some strategies to use for a good conclusion. How about using questions? This is a very interesting way to finish. You can leave your listeners thinking about your topic even after you have finished your talk. Maybe a question like this. After all, isn't that why we are all here? Maybe that will work for you. How about this one? Let me just finish with a question. If we don't do it, won't somebody else? Another great question to end a presentation. Everybody is thinking about it and maybe they agree with the way that you asked the question. Some people like to quote a well-known person. It's a common technique to make your point stronger or to stress your argument in your presentation. For example, as Albert Einstein once said, you can quote him here, to quote a well-known businessman, Steve Jobs said, or we can say, to put it in the words of, for example, to put it in the words of my idol, Donald Trump, and then we can put the quote at the end there. If we think it summarizes the things that we have been talking about in our presentation, and I'm sure Mr. Trump will be very proud. We can also refer back to the beginning of our presentation. This is an easy way to summarize the information that we have been discussing. For example, remember what I said at the beginning of my talk today? Well, so the beginning of our talk today, we spoke about how to give a presentation and how to introduce yourself, also how to dress, so we can refer our people back to that. All the attendees at the event will start to remember if we just give them a couple of words. Remember what I said at the beginning of my talk today about body language? Well, now it's time to discuss it again. How about this one? Let me go back to the story I told you earlier. Remember? For example, if we had told a story or a tale at the start of our presentation or in the middle, this is the time to go back to it and help our audience to recall what we were talking about. And this will help us to stress our final point in the presentation. Some people like to call their audience to action. It really makes the listeners feel powerful after a presentation. How can we do it? We can use some phrases like this. So, that's the plan. Now, let's go and put it into practice. We gave our audience what sounds like an order, but it helps them feel powerful and they can use the information you have given them to go on and do something great after your talk. It's also another famous phrase to tell people, so, now it's your turn. We're giving our audience the information during our talk, and then after that, we're giving them the opportunity to do something with it. We can also use a phrase like this. Now, let's make a real effort to achieve this goal. By saying let's, we're saying we're all together in this one. Let's make a real effort. Everybody try hard to achieve this goal. That means we've all got something to aim to together. And let's work hard as a team. What a great way to make your listeners feel powerful in your conclusion. Sometimes you might get a Q&A session or question and answer session after your presentation. It's very normal that people would want to know more about what you had to say, especially if you had a really interesting presentation. Here are some of the phrases that will help you handle this time. If you need to ask for clarification from someone from their question, or if you didn't understand their question, maybe it just wasn't clear, let's try some of these next phrases. We want to be polite, but we want them to repeat it. Let's try, I'm sorry, Could you repeat your question, please? Very important that we have please in this sentence in an English-speaking culture. This helps everyone to feel like you are very polite, and we use the modal verb could in there instead of just telling people, repeat your question, please. We also like to say in English often, I'm afraid. This doesn't always mean that I'm scared of something. We can use it like this. I'm afraid I didn't quite hear that. Or, I'm afraid I didn't quite catch that. That just means, I'm sorry, but I didn't hear you properly. Or, I'm sorry, but I didn't understand that quite perfectly. We can also say, I'm afraid I don't quite understand your question. Again, it doesn't mean we're scared, it just means, I'm sorry, but I didn't hear you. It's another way that we try to be polite when we're speaking English. Sometimes you might not want to answer a question because it's the wrong time for it. Maybe you don't want questions during your presentation. Maybe you don't have time at the end of the presentation. Or maybe the question isn't related to the topic. When you don't want to give an answer, make sure that your tone of voice is always friendly and that your reply is polite. Here are some examples we can use. If you don't mind, I'd prefer not to discuss them today. Very polite. 2 clauses. The first one, if you don't mind. We're saying, I'm sorry about this, but I'm asking their permission. I'd prefer not to discuss that today. It's a very polite way of saying, I don't want to talk about that. How about this sentence, which starts with perhaps, also means maybe. Perhaps we could do this after the presentation or some other time. This shows the audience member that we don't really have time for this at the moment, but it's also a way that we can avoid giving an answer at this time. How about this one with I'm afraid again? I'm afraid that's not really what we're here to discuss today. This phrase is best used if somebody asks a question that is not relevant to the topic. Admitting you don't know the answer to a question. Well, it's important to be honest. People trust this. If you don't know the answer to a question, be honest and say so. Offer to find out, maybe after your talk, or name a person who can answer a question for you. What about saying phrases like this? Sorry, that's not my field, but I'm sure Peter from sales could answer your question. My field in this sentence means my area in the business. I'm afraid I don't know the answer to your question, but I'll try to help find out for you. This is being very honest that we don't know the answer at this moment, but we want to find the answer for the delegate who has asked the question. Maybe we can exchange contact details with them at the end. Another way of admitting we don't know the answer is by saying, I'm afraid I'm not in a position to answer that. Perhaps Maria could help, or Peter from sales. This way, we admit we don't know the answer, but we are indirect about how we say it. I'm not in a position to answer that. That means maybe someone else will answer it better, but it also secretly means I don't know the answer. Well, that was a lot of information about giving presentations in English today with us at Language Link. I hope you enjoyed learning some more about English pronunciation and techniques today. If you thought this video was useful, please click the like button and follow our page on Facebook. I hope to see you next time for another video to help you improve your English. From all of us here at Language Link and our live stream, listen, speak and roar! We hope to see you soon. Goodbye!